Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the weekly guest show with emotional awareness discussion. This week we are on the 21st show. Oh, YouTube has now kicked in, and I was then going to say for the first time to celebrate. That threw me off then. That's something I've not encountered before. So yes, 21st of 52 weeks. We are halfway with the 52-week challenge for this show. And for the first time ever, instead of just streaming to Facebook tonight, I am streaming live to YouTube as well. I didn't account for the fact that it was going to kick in and loop the sound back, but we're good. I've paused that, and hopefully everybody else can still see that playing live. So if you've got any comments, please do leave them in Facebook or on YouTube, and they will pop up. We are in stream now, but we will see them. And I've got, if you see me look into this side at any point, it's because I'm checking for comments. I'm not being rude to John. So anyway, without further ado, welcome to the halfway mark and welcome to the guest show this evening. And I have something, I always like to bring you something different or somebody different, a whole new topic. And this evening we've got John Hoyte, who is going to be talking to us about aerotoxic syndrome. But I'm pretty sure in amongst that, we're going to hear a lot about John's career and background. And I think this is going to be we're going to be taking a long flight on this conversation, taking in the scenes, taking in the sights. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Kay. Thanks again.
Thank
Great.
You.
Okay.
And yeah, so first of all, tell us a little bit. We're talking about aerotoxic syndrome, but before that, I think it'd be absolutely fascinating to hear a little bit about your background, because you have an absolutely fascinating history, and I'll leave it to you to tell it in the right way.
Okay, but like all pilots, we've got a record, and mine goes back to the year dot. I was born in Edinburgh and flew within weeks, and ended up in Ceylon, and then flew back. So this is all in record. But every pilot will say they get absolutely addicted to flying, and that happened when I was about 4 years old in Norfolk.
Oh wow!
In aircraft were around, and you at 4 you just get completely lally about it. So yeah, and then you focus on it at school, and you join the CCF and fly at every opportunity, and you get, it's like a good drug, honestly, but it's legal, decent, everybody encourages you, so there you go. And then yeah, it's out. And for me, I got my private pilot's license in 1976, 77, and then you work out the system and you think, hang on, I can instruct other people. So I had 2 years of flying instruction, which is weird because you got no knowledge, but you're teaching other people. So that completely reinforces it all the time. So, and then you're always get paid as a flying instructor. So you have to think, how am I going to get paid? So it's a constant challenge to, so what I really want to do is aerial crop spraying, which is low flying, because I suppose I enjoyed the buzz of low flying and the danger. But in actual fact, it's not a dangerous job because you take up so many precautions. It's actually quite boring. And everybody's
right.
Yeah, but it's literally that high off the ground. But you're kind of, what you're doing, and you take precautions. So I did that for 7 years, and then I did aerial firefighting in Australia and flew in Kenya. So I had a great time, pioneering stuff, and it all seemed normal in the 80s. And then you get married, and you kind of think, I want a safe job because that wasn't safe. So, but you work it out yourself. You think, no, I've had 7 years. That's about the average. And then I changed career completely. I took up ad hoc freight flying from Coventry for Aerotoxic on DC-3 Dakotas. That's sort of, twin engine aircraft, and did that for a couple of years. Maritime pollution patrol, it's all good fun. Then you think, well, this is still not safe. There's something not right. So you want jet flying, don't you? That's the thing that's safe. And everybody says, yeah, that's the career for the next 30 years. So eventually you end up flying for a TNT on the BAE 146. That's a 4-engine jet. And you think, I've arrived. It's like happy days. And then, yeah, so that's the intro for the flying background, really.
Wow. I like the way you say just ordinary. It wasn't normal. Nothing normal about any of that, not for most of us.
A lot of other people do exactly the same, I promise you. I know there's like 10,000 pilots in the country, so everybody relates to what I've said, and some people either get them to the RAF, they get into British Airways. I always did it the hard way, I sort of eventually, and then you end up flying with RAF pilots and BA pilots, and it's a great leveler, really, flying, because you're all a job, and you get trained pretty well, to handle crisis. And
I should think so. Goodness me.
And that was the Queen's jet, the one that I was flying in '89, a 4-engine jet. And you kind of think, wow, this is good, going all around Europe, you know, and any weather conditions, and that's good fun, isn't it? And you get
So you
paid.
say the Queen's jet, was she actually travelling on it, you mean?
No, just the
Oh,
type of aircraft, you know, the
oh right.
4-engine jet, because it's used for freight, which is what I was doing for TNT. And then,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and then she was flying, obviously, for her sort of purposes. But it's a great airplane. It looks fantastic. You've probably seen it, but it's got a dark reputation. And within 4 months of flying it in '89, in the spring of 1990, about 30 years ago, I started to feel really bad, you know. And we were night flying, so it disguises what was really going on. But my memory started to go, and speech, and, you know, numerous neurological problems. And that's when I kind of thought, don't tell anybody, because if you tell somebody, you know, you'll lose
Yeah.
your way. They'll say sorry, but you shouldn't be flying. So you just keep quiet and just keep going, and it's very subtle. And before long, you know, you got real problems. But again, the night flying, masking it, because you're going to work at 9 at night and finishing at 6 in the morning. So it's kind of, yeah, it's very subtle how it happens. I've worked it out. So by 1998, I thought, whoa, something seriously wrong here.
Yeah, it's funny because you say about all the health and safety, and you were saying about even the crop spraying and low flying being safe, and you say even it's boring. And there is so much health and safety in place. And believe me, I've worked in environments with very strong health and safety, you know,
Really?
engineer environments. Oh yeah. Yeah, I used to work for an offshore wind farm.
Oh,
And I was there for, again, 7 years. Something about the 7 years. But I was there for 7 years. But the last 2 years I was there, I was also running the facilities on site. I was coordinating the facilities. And I had to take the IOSH training and do all the toolbox talks and read all the risk assessments and method statements. You know, I got very familiar with them. So I'm very, very familiar with that. But it's amazing how you say when you start to feel unwell, which was probably one of the biggest risks of all.
Still going on today, Kay.
You don't say it. You don't say anything.
You know, and that's the sad story, really. So I kept flying night time, and then went day flight. In 1998 for Fly B, the we call passengers self-loading freight, because they get on the airplane and you don't have to actually load them. So that's, and I did that till 2005. But by now I'm really losing it, you know, in a mess. Kind of idle and not right, and you stop flying, and I'll spare you all the details. They're on the website. So by 2005 I was completely messed up, and that's when I stopped. And then you have a 6 months of complete disaster when you think, well, how come I got grounded age 49? What's going on? And then in 2006, Eureka, you get tested by University College London. It's published. It's not just you, it's like 26 other union pilots. And they said, you've all been poisoned. You think, oh, okay. By the air in the aircraft.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
And that's when you start to put 2 and 2 together. You're still very ill, but you can make sense of it. Okay? And then, 22nd of May, 2006, I kind of worked it out and wrote it down. And here we are 15 years later, still arguing about it. And you kind of think, this is mad. You know?
Yeah. You think something would come out by then.
So really, the history of Aerotoxic is that it was first, shall I tell you how it happens or not?
So we'll come around to that. You know, we've got an hour. We're only 8 minutes in. We've got an hour. But you know, it is incredible. So you know, you've had such a long career already at this point, and you've done some incredible things, like you say, from going from flying very young to learning and instructing other people crop spraying. Tell us a bit more about the firefighting as well. I want to hear a bit more about that. And what was it that gave you a buzz about that, or is there things that terrified you?
Well, I loved Australia. The Australians were very laid back, and they said, look, you know, we've got a job here putting out fires in the Adelaide Hills. Do you want to do it? And I said, well, yeah, I'm doing nothing else. I mean, it's work, really, isn't it? So as we were saying earlier, and then worry about it later, how you actually do it. But it was an extension of what I'd already been doing. So I was flying this Beaver aircraft, and it was great fun. You felt as though you're doing some good, you know, because I always like to do some good. And you actually, they'd had some terrible problems with bushfires there, and here was I putting them out, and did it for 4 years, and had a huge, and pioneered it. So now it's a multi-billion-dollar business. I'm quite good at starting, but not finishing them off, really. So.
Oh no! So yeah, I was saying, because was it last year they had really, really bad year again, didn't they?
But every few years they have a shocker, and then the thing is that the politicians get burnt, and then they do something about it. You know, it's only when people die and they do something, basically. And 5 years ago, they had a bad fire near Canberra, and they decided to do something about it because it affected the politicians. You know, suddenly they don't like it. You know.
No. Oh, bless. So yeah, you've had a really interesting career, lots of things, and you're like not afraid of anything. You just seems like you just take it all in your stride.
That's the problem. I haven't got any fear, you know, because all pilots are pretty together, and I have got fear of not doing what I should be doing, but I haven't got fear of, you know, dying or anything. No, absolutely not. You know, but
unbelievable.
Because I'm okay at flying, and you know, I know I'm going to survive. So,
but I think it because you know all the safety measures in place. Does that take away the fear? And perhaps if they weren't there, that make a difference. And I think that applies to most of life. When you know the right safety measures are in place and the right people around you, there is nothing to be afraid of. So, mostly.
Men are not, you know, men are not really certain things, you know. And so I met a lot of women who aren't afraid either. So, you know, terrified of certain things. So it's not a man-woman thing. But anyway.
No, it isn't, because I've met men who are a lot more afraid of things than I am, and vice versa. And I've met women engineers who do anything. Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty fearless too.
I'm one of the people who was afraid of everything, and I'm still getting used to not being afraid of things. I'm still coming to terms with a lot of it.
All right. Well, I need to learn the other thing. I've been scared of a few things because I'm not really sick.
Oh my goodness! Oh, I know. I think I would rather be your way around and just embrace everything. This is great. So so you suddenly find yourself in your 40s, late 40s, not being well when you're flying, and it then found out it's attributed to the specific plane, and you end up coming down from the air.
It wasn't a specific plane; it was all planes. You only work out the aircraft I was flying was the worst of the lot. So on a scale of 10, I always measure things scale 0 to 10. So the airplane I flew was like 11 on a scale of 0 to 10. It was off the scale.
Oh dear. Right.
But all the other aircraft have exactly the same problem, and the fundamental design flaw. Shall I run through that now? And
yeah, you can do. I was going to say, is this feel differently though to like jet lag? So all this flying you've done up to this point, did you ever suffer jet lag or anything else? Or?
No, not in the great scheme of things. No, I was I didn't understand what was going on at the time in the 80s. I only worked that out 15 years ago. So.
Oh, brilliant. So tell us. So you finally find out there's this design flaw in planes.
Right. So the first 15 years of my flying career was in aircraft going not above 10,000 feet. In Kenya, I flew at 10,000 feet. So the airplane doesn't fly very well, but the body work at 10,000 feet. You know, it's like the top of a mountain, really. But if you go up, you need oxygen, and that's what you need in an aircraft. So for the second half of my career, I flew these jets. And I remember the guy saying, well, the air comes to you from the engines. You think, what? The air comes from the engines? Yeah, it's pressurized air coming off the engine into the aircraft. You think, well, and that's how they pressurize it to go above 10,000 feet. So you engines in a jet. Virtually every jet ever built has got a thing called bleed air, you know, so that's what you're breathing. But it's not filtered. It comes straight off the engines.
So it's bringing in all sorts of stuff,
the next thing you need to know is, and there's seriously bad chemicals in the engines. You know, and the worst one is organophosphates, which we use the sheep dip to kill the bugs on the sheep. But they're used in aircraft because they're good anti-wear agents, and they make the engines last longer. But anybody breathing them will not last longer. So there we are. So that's the simple, you know. And these are only in small amounts, like 4 or 5% in the oil, but it's enough to make you seriously ill, you know, and it nearly killed me. And it's killed many of my friends, you know, so there we are.
Oh, goodness.
It was given a name because they all worked it out. In 1999, there was a Frenchman called Jean-Christophe Balloway, doctor, French forensic scientist, and then an American, Harry Hoffman, and Australian toxicologist. And they studied people in the 1990s. So I could have been studying in the 1990s. And they worked it out, and they gave it a name, Aerotoxic syndrome, in a published, you know. And I'm sorry, I know all the dates and times almost.
Yeah, that's the bit I'm not good at. So you've still got something going on up there to remember that.
Yeah, I was, you know, remember I was a zombie 15 years ago, so I kind of got it back. So, and that's the trouble. I've kind
incredible.
That you're not meant to get better, you're meant to die and everything. So anyway, these three gentlemen, they established the term Aerotoxic syndrome in 1999. And then the French guy, he went to Boeing and said, look, you've got to change your aircraft because you're poisoning people. And they put it into the Boeing 787, which flew in 2009, and that doesn't
Wow.
the engine. So, you know, so they absolutely listened. I mean, they're not stupid, Boeing, and they did what they were told, you know, and they changed the architecture, you know, so that was what happened. And but still these aircraft are flying around. And, you know, when I found out about it in 2006, I thought, well, this can't be happening. It's like, and then you think, hang on, it's all written down. It's because everything's on a date line. So, you know, for the last 15 years, I've kind of been a bit of an expert in it, really.
Yeah, well, if that's all you know, you really focus on studying that, you will remember it.
Well,
That's me, I'm terrible for
other
dates,
things.
but
I like sailing and doing other things, but you know, it's
oh wow.
life, haven't you? You know, and I love flying,
Brilliant.
and you know, that's the main thing of my life, really. And I'm going back to flying now because I'm, you know, because at some point you just think enough, you know, and fed up with arguing, you know, you just, you know, they can either
Yeah. Do
take
you
it or
just do you restrict it now, or have they sorted the filter system?
no,
Yeah.
no, because they can't. It's a fundamental design flaw. It's been there for
Right.
like 70 years now, so it's become normal, and everybody gets sick. And what you said earlier about jet lag, you know, people fly east west and get time zone, you know, affected, but they also get poisoned. You know, on one flight
Yeah.
from E, you can get zapped by this problem, and so there we are.
Okay. So for people who watch this, because you know, we get a lot more people watch this on replay later as well.
Yeah.
Um, how would somebody tell, like for example, they say, oh, I don't feel right, got off a plane, feeling a bit wobbly, whatever. How would they
Right.
know the difference between jet lag and the aerotoxic syndrome? What would be some of the first
Well,
signs to get tested?
yeah. I mean, you know, the symptoms are sort of neurological. You know, first of all, you've got some exhaustion and what do you call it? Memory problems, speech problems. You know, affects every organ in the body, organophosphate. So you can have heart problems, lung problems, brain problems. You know, you've got a list, and that's what confuses the
Goodness.
doctor because you've got too many symptoms, really, and they're all slightly different. You know, for different people. But now they can test your blood, they can test your fat, test your hair. They can see the organophosphates in every part of your body. So, you know, that's kind of the absolute proof, isn't it? So you,
Yeah.
regardless of your words or what you say, they can see it in you anyway. So, but of course, it's very inconvenient. So they're busily trying to cover it up at the moment because it's been known for about 10 years. But, you know, obviously, all these universities have been working on it, but they can never actually, because if they're too successful, they'll just ground all the aircraft, really. So they have to sort of fudge it.
Mm.
They're doing at the moment. Yeah.
So they really got to find a solution rather than ground it.
Yeah.
It's down to
But the
finding a
solutions are
solution.
there. The Boeing 787, they don't take air from the engine, they pump it in using electric air pump. And
Okay.
kind of obvious. I mean, if you ask a 10-year-old, how would you do it instead of, they'd tell you, you know. So, and then if you look back into the history, that's how first jets flew in the 50s. They had mechanical air pumps. So when I went to Ceylon, you know, aged nothing, I was breathing air from a mechanical air pump. Because
Yeah.
it's like a bicycle pump. You just pump the fuselage up, you know, with air. So that's kind of how they did it. And then some bright spark in 1962 said, well, hang on, let's use this bleed air because that's free, you know, unlimited pressurized air. Let's just pump it into the cabin. And in those days, everybody smoked cigarettes, or not everybody.
Yeah.
You know, the whole aircraft was full of smoke, and nobody noticed the odd bit of oil. They thought, oh, don't worry, it's only a bit of oil. And then, of course, they banned smoking in the mid 80s, and that's when you really noticed it. And then also they took the time limit off jets. They used to maintain them at 5,000 hours, and they said, well, 50,000. You know, they just took all the limits off. So it's a, you know, it's a classic sort of human error thing, really, all coming together.
Goodness.
And
Yeah.
so there we are. You know. And,
Amazing. So you mentioned a little while ago, as you put it very elegantly, you were like a zombie 15 years ago. So tell us a little bit more, sorry, if you're willing to, that is, about how it affected you, because it sounds like
right.
it hit you pretty seriously.
Yeah. Well, I went on a training captain's course in 2001 when I was really bad. And I still had 5 years to go, really, or 4 years. But they filmed me for an hour. And this guy was saying, but why can't you speak? You know, because I could only speak in 5 words, maybe. And you got this
Oh,
guy
goodness.
to me and saying, well, why can't you speak? I said, well, I don't know. You know, sorry.
Mm.
Off, you know, it's like humor's a great defense. So you crack a joke and everybody starts laughing. So, you know, pilots learn skills to sort of act. But you can see the film now, you know, and that's pretty good proof, really. Forgotten what your question.
Right. Well, we've perhaps put a link to that in the chat afterwards. So if anybody
Yeah,
wants to see it, we'll find that and we'll drop the link in.
but
Yeah.
I've got the perfect case for a court of law. I mean, they were just sort of, yeah, and everybody else had. other pilots have, but they still say it doesn't exist. So you're in this crazy world where, you know, one got a professional body of airline pilots saying you've got a big problem, and then they had a conference in '05 in London, you know, BALPA, the union, specifically for this thing for 2 days. All these experts from all around the world came and you know, talked about it, and then they came up with a statement saying there's a huge problem. You kind of think, well, can you read? You know, it's all written down and videos and goodness knows what. But the government are pretty good at, you know, sort of covering stuff up, really, and that's what's been going on for the last 20 years. Well, it still is.
So I know it's obviously a big emotional issue in itself. It is trying to battle a strategy like that and to create change. So I think in terms of emotional awareness here, we, you know, that's a big emotional challenge in itself, I think, for you, isn't it? Is how to create change. And I think that's a really good inspiration, your story, to people, that just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean you can't start to tackle something new. We were worried about it going dark and your lights not being on, and now you've got the opposite.
That's right.
That's fine. You're glowing. That's fine. Yeah, look a bit bright, bless. So we were worried about, you know, sorry, I've got to jump back again. That has put me right off. I do this now and again.
Sorry,
I just completely lose the plot. No, you're all right. No, it's all right. So it's a big emotional challenge to create change and say, you know, to stand out and say, this is different. We need to do something about it. But you sound like, for you, that's not much of a fear anymore than flying.
Well, trick is not to do it on your own. If you did it on your own, everybody say, well, I don't believe you. But if you do it with lots of other people, then you kind of think, well, look at Fred and Bill, they're all saying the same. So you kind of, you know, it's safety in numbers, isn't there, really? And that's what's good.
That's good. Collaboration, I like that.
And the nation which will sort this out is the French nation, okay? Because of the guy who sort of thought of it in the first place. And then, of course, the Airbus thing. And they have a different system in France. They, you know, the egalitarian and, you know, all that stuff. You know, they've got different ways of doing it. And they don't really care about the British or the Americans. They do their own thing. Yes, because so that's where it'll be sorted out. Not in this country, not in America, not in Germany. It'll be France, really. So that's where we are, really. Yeah. French friends, obviously.
You know, it's obviously big dues to you as well to keep going. And you say this is 14 years now you've been doing this?
Yeah.
14, 15 years. So,
you know, you lose count of the years. The first 5 years are the worst because you're ill and you can't speak and you can't think. So that's quite hard, but you can sort of read and that's how it is. And, you know, but now I'm fine. And, you know, so looking back, the first 5 years are the worst. Now it's kind of easy, really. And then you're planning the next bit for when you sort of, you know, but as you know from health and safety, you don't need 99% proof for any health and safety issue. You just need 51% proof. So at the moment,
very different.
100%, and that's crazy. You know, you shouldn't have that. So anyway,
no, that's very true. Yeah, it's
I
not
treat
like
everything the same, don't you? You know, I treat
not like a criminal case. I was going to say, not like a criminal case where you've got to be 100% certainly putting someone away. If it's like 50-50, this is safe, this is not safe, do you take chances with 50-50? And that's a difficult one.
There are a lot of court cases going on all around the world. There's 260 people at the moment in the UK, BA cabin crew and pilots and goodness knows what, waiting for their cases, and the law doesn't care. They just hang them out to dry, really, and keep. You know, it'll be next year or the year after, and you kind of think, but what about now? You know, it's going on at the moment, so the law deals with it because it's too big. You know, if it was ever proved, it would just ground aviation, really.
So definitely you've made a movement and something's happening there. But do you think having something to focus on has actually helped you with your recovery, or is there anything else?
Oh, for sure, because it gives you something to jump out of bed for in the morning, doesn't it? But nice thing, but you know, you commit your life to it. But I didn't do that. If you know, because I kept a diary from 2006 to 2013, so you can read everything that happened in that period. But I didn't. I felt it's so obvious. I thought, well, come on, it's all written down. You know, which bit don't you understand? So you know, it's been written for waiting, but you know, but that's true of lots of things, isn't it? You have to wait and be patient. But
like I say, I think it sounds like you were getting to a point you're winning, but then I think also this last year with the pandemic and the EU, the last few years and all the Brexit, I think a lot of energy is focused on them. So it's no excuse, but at the same time, you know, it is very difficult to get change done through Parliament. And I know that's a very difficult challenge to keep going and keep going and keep going. Have you ever felt a moment where it's like, oh, I really should just give up?
Well, people keep telling me to give up, but you kind of think, don't think so, because we're just about to win. So
you truly believe in what you
telling me
do.
to
That's
give up.
amazing.
You kind of think, no, you don't understand what's going on. You know, I don't think I very well to people sometimes, you know, because they keep telling you to give up. You think, no, I don't think so. It's like an open goal, you're going to boot the ball in, really, and you know, so you never give up. You know, no give up really. So anyway,
oh wow.
So wouldn't know how to give up. How do you give up? I mean,
exactly. Do you know what? I get you on that. I've had that. I've had people asking me why I do what I do, I shouldn't do it, or you know, you'd be better off just getting an ordinary job. And I've had all that. And or you'd be better. Yeah, I've had people telling me
an ordinary job. I've gone back to flying, so I've advice. No, seriously, this week I've gone back to my flying job. So
amazing.
I was flying today, and just like 40 years ago. So you kind of think, well, that's okay, because everyone does that. So you keep people happy by doing what people have expectations of you. You know, they don't want you causing trouble, basically. You know, and so I've flying. So there we are.
You sound like you love it, though.
Well, I do. I love flying. You know, it's just...
No, I mean causing trouble.
No, I don't. Honestly, I'm a good boy. But I always believe in right, and you know, I'm Libran, so I believe in equality and justice and all those good things. And I think most other people do, to be honest. You know, but it's a numbers game with this Aerotoxic. It affects 30% of the population, so 70% are not affected, and they don't care. They really couldn't care monkeys, you know. But the 30% they're affected, and then there's like 4 or 5% who are really badly affected. And that was probably me. And then a lesser percent, you know, it's just like COVID, who are really, they die, you know. So you've got about 800 people who've died in the last 10 years in the UK aircrew in their 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, because of this thing. And it's all
800.
And yeah.
Geez, so that's a lot in 10 years.
Well, there's 1 million people in Europe with Aerotoxic syndrome. Now, this is other people saying this, not me. I'm just passing on the information from published papers, so on. So it's a big thing, but
yeah, and then it's not being addressed, or not that
we're
seeing. We don't hear about it.
It's too big. It's too big. I mean, so you know, we know all the solutions, but once you start putting the solutions in, that's an admission of liability or guilt or whatever. So they can't, you know, they're stuck with it.
Yeah, I would say maybe more of a case of they just gradually make changes over time. But you know, it's one thing to not want to admit liability. I get that, and that's a very difficult thing to deal with, because then you end up like this PIP thing and all these other things, or somebody claims on behalf of everybody, and then you've got to go through this specific claims desk to get your share of the compensation. So that is a massive liable case. But you know, I'm not into politics so much, so I kind of get it. But at the same time, it sounds like regardless of everything you've been through, you are incredibly resilient. Like nobody's ever going to tell you can't do something.
My daughter's the same. My son's the same. I promise you that they're kind of. And my mum is. She's 97. She's incredible. You know, Hitler tried to bomb her during the war. You know, so she's resilient.
Oh my goodness.
Where I get it from my genes from my family, really. So I just think it's normal. I think, you know, it's not a big deal, really. And there's lots of other me. I promise you. I'm
oh yeah, no, but it's just not very often we come across somebody like yourself, and not very often they come across somebody who's so, like, you know, you've had all this difficulty and you've had such a big challenge with something you're trying to change and create change, but you're so positive about it, you're never giving up, and it's like it's so nice to feel that sort of energy coming from somebody else. I've been more of a fear-based person most of my life, but I get it. When you get a passion for something, when it's really meant to do it, you cannot give it up.
I honestly didn't plan to set out like this. When I started my flying career, I didn't think, but on the other hand, you have a duty to do certain things. You know, when you find out about something, you have a duty to tell your friends and colleagues about it, and you have the duty, and that's the weird system in health and safety, all these procedures for you must tell somebody if you've got a problem. It's all there, and all we're doing is doing, you know, what we're meant to do, really. And I think, anyway, that's how I see it. Don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I must admit, it's like me. I didn't set out to do what I do either. I set out to have a family. But it was through that journey of having a family that was basically part of my career. That on the admin side. But it was through being a mum that I discovered what I do. And then it was like, okay, now I've realised I've got something will help people, I realised, well, what am I supposed to do with it? You know, and like you say, I just realised I've got my image up there twice today.
You learn
and like
from
you said,
experience. I know you have. I know you've been in a
yeah,
situation, and then you got the benefit, pass it on to somebody else and help them, and you just feel
exactly. And it's you know, you could just say, oh well, it's not my problem. But when you've got that kind of conscience and passion for something, you know, I get it. You're not the sort of person who can sit back and say it's not my problem. It's like, no, I've got to go and do something with this. So well done to you. Absolutely well done.
I just think it's normal, so I don't want any credit for it, because actually other people have done a lot more than I have, and I point to them and say, well, this guy's, you know, Tristan Lorraine, for example, he saved my life in 2006. Wow. He's been on it for 20 years. I've only been on it for 15, so he's got a 5-year start on me. He saw it clear as day in 2002, I think it was, you know, whenever. So, you know, you have to acknowledge other people, don't you? And they've done the hard work. I've just joined in, and then other people have joined in recently, so it's an ongoing thing, really. But it's a wicked thing that they're keeping it from the public, you know, the media, and I mean, it's just awful cover up, honestly. But we'll get blown eventually. They'll be on borrowed time, really. So it'll come out for sure. You know, and then
I'm going to say they'll get to a point where the word will get out enough to do something about it.
I mean, the BBC need to, you know, get a good kicking, really, because they've covered it up. You know, you're not allowed to mention the A word. I mean, we couldn't have this interview on the BBC, for example. It would just be banned.
Yeah, yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not into all the politics and cover up. I get it, but I don't get the mentality behind a lot of that for some reason.
You can understand it. It's weird, you know.
It is very complicated. Very complicated. To me it is. So you're saying it's not, but to me it is. It's like, you know, everybody's, you know, you were saying earlier about being technophobe. I said to you about, oh, go and do this on social media, and you're like, I found that is, I think, one of the things you like go about.
Yeah, but I think I found somebody today who can do all of that, because I think young people are that sort of thing. So they, you know, and then working like a captain and a first officer, I used to fly with young people and get them to do all the hard work, and you just make the decisions, and that's
got it.
Now, really,
delegating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But they've got the skills, and they do it naturally and normally, really. Whereas I'm not really.
No, I must admit, people say to me I've done really well with all my social media, but I'm like, no, thank you, but no. I really feel like I struggle with keeping up the way some people do, and I know I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. I have a go, but I struggle with keeping up with all of it. It's really hard work.
My mum's 97; she does it, so you know we must. You know, because she's got to a level where she enjoys it, and that's remarkable, isn't it? Really. So I'm 60. You know, I can do it, but I'm not natural at it. You know, so.
Bless her.
You work with 30-year-olds who can do it, you know, with their eyes closed. Really, it seems to me.
Your mum's done incredibly well to get to 97. Does she have
like a teenager now? You know, she's kind of going backwards.
Does she have a secret that she shares and said? Does she ever say what's her secret?
Staying busy. She's a master of Norwich shawls. When she retired in her 60s, she had something to do, so she, you know, Norwich shawls are very special and were city wealthy in for 200 years, but nobody had studied them, so she devoted 30 years of her life to them, and you know, now she's a complete master of it, and it's keeping busy, isn't it, and finding something of interest. And I know about her, but you know, it's her baby, not mine, and this has become mine. And then my sister's very good at enamel painting, so she's you know, been an expert in that. But we all find something to do, don't we? That's where I get it from, really. Yeah.
Oh, incredible. And it's amazing, like you say, well, for you, saying recovering from the aerotoxic syndrome, keeping busy has helped you with that recovery, and with your mum.
You want to know what the recovery is, because that's the big question. How do you get better? So you know, you've been poisoned and you're in a bad way. So the way to get better, in 2006, I went to see this doctor called Sarah Myhill in mid Wales, and all the NHS doctors are saying, "Well, have these little pills, you know, they'll make you happy." And I said, "No, I'm not depressed, you know, something else, you know, you're not telling me." So I went to Sarah Myhill in mid Wales, and she was an organophosphate expert. She'd helped the sheep farmer and so on. And she said, "No, I know all about this." So I remember very clearly her diagnosis. She said, "Well, this is what to do." She said, "Stop flying, because you know that's stopping the exposures." And I'd already stopped anyway, so that wasn't difficult. Don't go back, you know, because if you go back to it, you'll just get more of the same. So stop flying, eat well, sleep well, do little, don't take any medication unnecessarily, like antidepressants. And I'd be in 2 years, I'd start to recover. And almost exactly to the day, and that was me sort of recovering in early
Oh, wow.
2007. So there you go. And that's from the world expert. So I was just lucky, I went to the right person. And then
Oh, that is very lucky, yeah.
officially, because it's all published and it's all there. And then you think, oh my God, this is a huge thing. And then,
Oh, wow.
try and help other people, I suppose, for the next.
So if today somebody says, oh, I think that might be affecting me, like they've traveled a lot, or they've been a pilot like yourself, or just spent a lot of time flying for holiday or with business. And I think this must affect a lot of business people as well.
Oh, frequent
So they're
flyers.
flying a lot.
Ironically,
Yeah.
all the wealthiest people in the world fly around in biz jets, and they all use bleed air. It's unbelievable. And
So if they think, oh, that could be what's affecting them, and they feel a bit strange and they haven't realised, where would you recommend they get advice from? So obviously, not everybody can go and see your lady in Wales from all over the world.
well, her
So
website's amazing.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Freely, Dr. Sarah Myhill. I mean, incredible. And she wrote it all down for me in 2007, November 2007, so I can send anybody the paper. But I mean, it's unbelievable. It's all written down. And then all the other doctors hate her because she's making people better, and they want to promote their little pills and everything. So there's a sort of warfare going on in the medical community. They all hate each other, and it's all money. It's all to do with big pharma and everything, So yeah, Sarah kind of works out big time, and so yeah, all the information's on the website, my Aerotoxic website, and and then I'm connected with Americans, French and Dutch and Germans, and all around the world really. Australia. That's the country which really kicked it off in the 1900s, 1990s. There was a lot of Australians who worked it out, including Chris Winder, the professor, who sort of joined the other three to give the name. And you know what the Australians are like; they call a spade a shovel, really. And so yeah,
So I call it something different, but it's the same thing. Yeah. I'll pop the link. I'll pop the link now in the chat actually. So it's aerotoxic.org. That's now going in the chat. I'm not sure how to pop this in on YouTube. I might have to pop it in later because it's the first time I've done a live on YouTube. So I'm learning. Oh, here we go. I found it. So I will pop that in on YouTube as well. So this is going to be so much easier. And you've got the card there. Oh, amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So I've put the link both on YouTube and Facebook as we speak. So that anybody wants to see that can follow that through.
Yeah.
So yes, I love this. It said learning new things, trying something new. I've been playing it safe for too long, just doing it on Facebook. So
you're doing very well.
Thank you. But now I like to just. I'm more of a slow steps to do things gradually, not just all in ball scale. But it's amazing. So I said earlier, but you've got a tremendous amount of resilience, and you shared a little bit of something with me before we came on stage about where your resilience came from. Would you be happy to share that with us on live?
Yeah, remind me which particular bit. That's my family, my genes, my grandfather, my bringing up and my education, and I suppose is all a bit.
So you said you were flying from the age of 4?
Yeah, well, I saw my first aeroplane age 4, field in Norfolk, and I kind of think, wow, this is like good fun, So I immediately sort of zeroed in on this as a young man, and then going to school, you just kind of think, and you can't be a pilot because pilots have to be good at maths and everything. And I was terrible at maths, so I kind of think, well, you always think. So eventually, having joined the CCF at school and so on, I kind of left and got a normal job as a gas measurements officer, strangely enough, measuring gas, for North Sea Gas.
Oh, wow.
And then one day this little aircraft sprayed the field next door, and I thought, wow, that looks fun, And then New Year's resolution, 1976, learned to fly. And then, within 4 years, I was crop spraying, and, that's kind of how it works. You see something and then you think, well, I'll do that. And nobody's going to stop you, honestly. If somebody tries to stand aside, because I've got a plan. But you have a bit of luck and doors open, and, it's like a slippery pole, really, sort of trying to get up like everybody else. And so that's how it is, really.
Okay. Amazing. Because you said to me also about just say yes and then figure it out.
Yes.
And I've had somebody else say that to me a lot recently as well. And I really like that. I
you
still
know
find it
yourself.
hard sometimes to say yes, but I get
Yeah.
it, and so
But
say
that's the
yes and
general.
figure it out.
Yeah, but that's generally the principle. You say yes to everything and then worry about doing it later. Who said that? Somebody, I don't know, is some famous person, but it's true. You know, you say yes and about how to do it. You know, is that Lord Sugar or somebody? I don't know. But
I
anyway,
don't know, actually. I'm
it's
going
a
to
good
Google it.
principle in life. And then the other principle, this dear friend of mine told me, is never, no, always ask forgiveness, never ask permission. So just do something and then say, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry," and by then you've already done it. And then, because if you ask permission, people say, "No, you can't do that." You think,
Okay.
opportunity.
Well,
You do it anyway. It's kind of too late, you know.
I thought I'd just Google and say who said "just say yes," but it's come up with a song by Snow Patrol.
Right.
I can't actually.
I'm sure lots of people, you know, some actress back in the 30s or something. I don't know.
Yeah, more than likely.
But they get credited with certain sayings, don't they? And you know, but it's true, isn't it? Generally speaking, you
Richard Branson, possibly.
Branson.
Might have been Richard Branson.
He's a great guy, you know, and screw it, let's do it. I read his
Yeah,
book. And
yeah, he was.
ironically, now he's in trouble because of his airline, and he kind of, you know, and now he's, you know, this Aerotoxic thing because it's a very real. But he's a clever guy because 787. So I flew with it to Australia in 2016, you know, to go and see my friends again. So that aircraft you can't get poison on. So he's a smart guy. But do the passengers know about it? No. Do the crews know about it? No. Nobody knows about it.
But he's covered it
Isn't it?
going forward, which is good.
Yeah, so it's kind of strange, really. So anyway, but
Yeah,
positive
it's really,
people,
really
you know,
difficult.
we want solutions. We don't want to spoil anybody's fun, you know.
Yeah, I think in a way that's a shame, really, because it's yes, there are times and places where people should be able to say, okay, this has gone wrong. It should not have gone wrong. I deserve compensation. But it is such a difficult topic with so many people could be affected. Like you said, that's just opening floodgates and nobody's ever going to shut again.
Yeah,
But actually, what's more important than that should be putting things correct for the future. And I think when we look at that for the mentality, a lot of things we do in life, in day-to-day life, so not so much on a corporate scale, it's it, it's about not beating yourself up about what's happened, is what we say a lot of the time. But when you get
absolutely.
to that scale, it becomes a barrier to progress. But day-to-day life, for most people, certainly parents, teenagers, and anybody in a working environment, the important bit is about doing things right going forward. And you know, that would be
Absolutely.
nice to know that all of your efforts and all the many other people
Yeah.
helping have actually achieved that.
But we see it as right what we're doing, and you see it as right. But a lot of people say, no, you're doing the wrong thing. You mustn't tell people. And you think, no, that's terrible. And I've kind of worked it out. There's 5% of people who are positive who want the others to know and haven't got any money to do it, and they kind of know about it. And then there's another 5% who know about it, but they don't want the population to know the 100%. And that's really scary. You know, they're negative people, and they're actually making money out of it. The lawyers and the doctors and the scientists. And that's really scary. And they've got all the money in the world, 5%. And then you got the 90% who are just, you know, the sheeple, really, you know, who,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
they don't know and they never will because they made money out of basically, you know. So yeah.
yes, very difficult waters to navigate, sort of, so to speak. But yeah, so we've still got just over 15 minutes left. We're doing well.
Okay.
So of all the adventures that you've had with flying, what would you say is one of the most exciting adventures you've had?
The first flight, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, yeah, because the first time on your own, you kind of, the airplane's lighter, you haven't got the other guy in, and you know, I did two, one in a glider, one in a light aircraft, and you just got a big smile, you know, because you think, hang on, I'm on my own, you know, this is fantastic, you know, because obviously, but I flew today, for, you know, in a simulator for the first time for 4 years, so I've got a big smile on my face because I'm on my own and, you know, doing stuff I did 40 years ago, so, you know, you constantly get this. But it's not because I'm on my own. It's just, you know, it's deeply satisfying to sort of be doing something really. So yeah, the
Amazing.
flights, I suppose, and it was on my 21st birthday. You know, on the 17th of October 1976. That's when I went solo. But I didn't say, look, it's my 21st birthday. The guy just said, well, you're ready to go now. I think, okay, well, great, it's your decision. You know, and I've sent people solo, and it's a good feeling. You know, when you know they're going to survive because you don't send them solo and just you're 100% sure they're going to do the flight, you know, obviously. That's the system, really. It's a great system. It really is, honestly. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
But then every flight's good fun, honestly. I can remember just about every flight, and it's recorded in the logbooks, as I was saying earlier. So, I've done 10,000 hours, and every single flight, not crop spraying, because, I used to record 12-hour days, but I'd take off and land like 50 times, so you don't record every takeoff and landing, but,
You record the day, yeah. Started today, ended today, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Did 50 takeoffs and landings, or 100 or whatever, so
yeah.
You end up doing it, without even thinking about it. It's muscle memory, really. And that's the great thing flying. You just do it repetitively. And I was flying today, and I think, hang on, I've done this a million times, but it's like anything. I mean, what can you do? What do you do really frequently, which you can do? What do you do? And
oh, me?
I mean, yeah.
Not a lot.
Yeah, but you drive a car, don't you? Automatically.
I do, yeah.
You don't think about the gear changing, the brakes, your mind's somewhere else. You're driving down, and that's same with flying, really. You don't have. But it's easier in flying because you've got a first officer and a checklist, and that's how you can have half a brain and still fly, because you've got somebody to help, and it's so easy. Program press a few buttons, and away you go, honestly. And it's getting easier and easier, and that's the trap for pilots, because they're, it's such a lovely job, and there's some, after 100 years of flying, it's kind of got easier and easier. And there's a strange thing that the biggest aircraft is flown by the people with the most salary. You get paid the most for the biggest airplane, and yet the smallest aircraft is, you get virtually nothing to pay little aircraft. So.
And yet it's still the same person, the same amount of time flying it.
And same principles, same everything.
Yeah,
honestly.
but it's the risk of the extra lives, isn't it?
Possibly, but you don't think about it in the back when you're flying. You just think about your own neck. You think, I don't want to die, and you don't care about the 100 people down the back. You really,
this is very reassuring for anybody that wants to fly with you in future.
When they landed in the Hudson River, 99 out of 100 pilots would have done exactly the same. It all sounds very dramatic, but nobody in their lands in New York. Honestly, it'd have to be crazy to land in New York. Everybody would go for the river. It's kind of I mean, come on, it's kind of common sense, isn't it?
Yeah, that one is. I know there's lots that do go wrong in lots of ways, and always amazes me that the busiest airports are sort of like right near to a city, but it's the best place.
But again, they're the easiest ones to fly into. Heathrow is the easiest airport to fly into, because they make, right speed and everything. They talk you through it. You're just a sort of, but the hardest airports are the grass strips, the farmers have, that's where you kill yourself.
Oh goodness, yeah. Grass strips. Oh my goodness, there's loads of them all over Norfolk.
50 miles an hour, in 1983. I went through a hedge at 50 miles an hour and wrecked, but it got rebuilt, and now it's flying again down at South Wales. So that's on my bucket list this year, to fly the aeroplane again, because it's like,
oh wow.
Well, it's 30 years after I wrecked it, so it'd be good, wouldn't it? So
and it's still going. That's amazing. And so are you.
I don't think so. No, there's lots of pilots, I promise you. We're all the same. Kind of, honestly, all my mates are exactly the same. We're not crazy. We're pilots, really.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear that. And like you say, just an ordinary everyday thing for you, like driving a car. You just lose the ground a bit when you're doing it. So,
but you do when in automatic. That's the only point I was making. When you're doing the ironing, you're in auto mode, and your brain is just sort of
doing the what? Sorry,
ironing. Well, it's like automatic, isn't it? It's muscle memory.
Yeah,
you listen to the
absolutely.
Radio. Same for flying, honestly.
Yeah, it's like for me typing. A lot of people I get into a new job and they say, "Oh, just type so and so out," and I start typing while listening to them, and they're like, "Like, my gosh, not even looking at the keyboard."
Sure.
And it's something you start off with. It's not natural.
Can you touch type? Oh, right. See, I can't. I never will be able to. Well,
now I taught myself, and it was quite intense. But I lost a job, and I wanted another job, but I was starting to get into sort of more office work out of factories. And it was in the days when you had the old carriage return. You went ding and turned that, moved the whole carriage along with the paper. Right. And I bought a book about how to touch type, and I had to tear a sheet out of the book, roll it into the roller.
What age were you when you did this? I mean, quite young, or?
I was about 22.
But that's amazing,
on the carriage typewriter.
So it's hard
So
work for a few days, and then you got it, and yeah.
yeah. So
But
literally, to roll this paper
days.
in, a sheet of paper, and it had like every other line printed, and I had to type in between. But
Yeah,
to
yeah,
make sure I didn't cheat, and because the keyboards were very different to push down on, but I got a tea towel and I completely covered my hands so I couldn't cheat and look at the
right.
keyboard.
Good for you.
And I just worked through the book, and in a week I learned to touch type. But after
But
that,
can
I
you
had to,
tell me
like you
this?
say,
Why don't they
automatic.
teach it in schools now? So why don't they teach kids to touch type if it's so obvious? Why don't, from age of 5, why aren't they touch typing? Because they don't do
Mm.
that. That's kind of
I think
basics.
it's just for a lot of them, they get so used to doing it with a few fingers or two
Right.
fingers or three fingers or whatever, and
At
they
age
each find
5,
their
why
own
don't they say,
way.
right, guys, we're going to touch type from now on? Because surely it would
Yeah,
be efficient, wouldn't it? I don't
yeah,
know
it's much more
the
efficient.
syllabus.
Yeah.
So why don't they put it in syllabus? I don't know.
Well, they used to. The weird
Really?
thing is, I did actually fail my typing exam when I left school. I
Right.
learnt it later. Um,
Mm.
so I actually went back and I used to love doing it,
Mm.
but I just learnt it later,
All right.
like properly, real touch typing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I learnt it in a week. So when you want to do something, it sinks in more than when you're
Yeah.
taught to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, that's
Absolutely.
one of the most amazing things I learnt with my kids, because I home educated for a while with my children, and I very quickly learnt with my son that, and I saw it in a home education pamphlet. All children love to learn, but they don't like being taught. So no matter what you put in the
Mm.
curriculum, they'll learn it when they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, it
True.
was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
quite a challenge. But no, we all got different things we love doing. And my son now,
Yes.
he's working in a factory
Right.
and doing work which is quite
Mm.
manual, but you've got
Yeah.
to be repetitive. And
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
it start with, he said, oh, they're coming over, you've got to do this bit differently, that bit differently, you're not
Mm.
keeping up with targets. But
Mm.
then within a couple of months, they said, we don't know how he's doing it, he's actually beating the
Mm.
targets.
Amazing.
So yeah,
But
he's
surely you need to break and do something else because you can't keep doing. I don't know. I'd be hopeless in
oh
the fact.
yeah, you have your breaks and you
Yeah.
do your whatever
Yeah.
they
But
do,
no,
rotate
but
on
you
the
need a
lines and
different
whatever.
job. Yeah, you want a different job, don't you? Because otherwise you're
Yeah,
not.
well, at the moment that's suiting him. He's got another little baby on the way this year, so
Oh,
it's just
right.
giving him
Great.
regular hours, a bit of income,
Ooh, yeah.
and he'll sort his career out when he's ready. But
Sure.
it's suiting him at the moment. So yeah, I'm surprised. He surprised me actually how
Yeah,
well he's
good
taken
for
to
him.
it. But
No, it's amazing. No, it's really good.
yeah,
Great. Yeah.
so yes, so I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I can ask you. My word. So yeah, so we've got the Aerotoxic website in the chat for anybody
Yep.
that wants to catch up with that and thinks that might affect them. So, like you say, anybody who's frequent flyer or think they
Yep.
might have been affected by the fumes is like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were actually grounded, did you say you were married at that point or have a family or anything?
Yeah. Yeah. I was happily married and
Mm,
wife and but
yeah.
when sort of taking on the establishment, you're not popular with your family. They say no, stop doing that.
Yeah, I
So
was going to say, so how did that affect family life?
well, she left me, in 2007, just when I was kind of
Goodness.
sitting somewhere. She said, I'm off, so yeah, that was sad. But then you couldn't have done what I've done married because your partner would say, sorry, you can't, you know. So actually, last 15 years have been on my own, but that's okay. I've got lots of great friends, so you just own, and I don't want to be on my own forever. So, but yeah, it's a choice thing, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
but anyway, no
that's a
regrets.
powerful word
No
there.
regrets. Looking back, you can't have regrets.
No,
It's forward because you can't, cut yourself up. What happened
no.
30 years ago? You just got to keep going forward, really, and try and help others because they're in the same model now that I was in 15 years ago, and you can sort of help others really deal with it, and that's what I try and do now. Obviously, I've been doing it for 14 years, really, and yeah, and it's very satisfying, really, and I've kind of worked out a few things. So yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoy it. Not not that it was fun going through it, but I'm glad you're really finding something out of it.
Mm. Mm.
I really do wish you all the best and that you get the
Thank you.
results you want. And
Yeah,
absolutely, but you touched on a really important word. It's a choice.
yeah, yeah.
Of all the things we said tonight, that's a
Right.
powerful word. Everything
Okay.
is a choice,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
and I love that. To me, it's a word
Really?
that I hear
Yeah.
repetitively. It's like sometimes when somebody's tuned into something and you see it over and over and over. That's the word that I hear when it comes up
Mm.
over and over is the word
Mm.
choice, because I
Yeah.
think everybody has a choice. When you were taken ill, and then you had a choice whether or not you dealt with this or not.
Yeah.
You
The
know,
weird
whether or
thing
not.
is, it still doesn't officially exist, you know. So it's kind of, because people think you're crazy because you're dealing with something which doesn't formally exist, and you think, well, it will do in France, you know, within weeks or days. You know, it was meant to be recognised in France on 20th of March, but then they changed their mind at the last minute. You know, so it's, you know, and when it happens in France, it'll snowball around the world, really. So suddenly it'll go from 0 to 100%, you know, just overnight, really. And people say, but why couldn't we talk about it? Oh, well, you know, ask the BBC, it's in their wisdom that they choose not to. So that's going to be the hard thing. Just sort of, yeah, and it's a bit easy, really.
They will when they're ready.
Well,
you'll be in great demand when they're ready. They've just got to be ready.
But I'll go back to flying. I shan't be. You know, it's all written down. If they can read, they can. You don't need me to tell them. Honestly, you know, it's all recorded. You know, really made loads of documentary films over the years. A Dark Reflection in 2014. It takes you. You can get it free on Amazon, actually, if you look on Amazon.
Right.
A Dark Reflection. It's a film, and that prophesies the ending. So we sort of made that in 2014, but and the Sunday Express endorsed it. You know, they're in the film. So, you know, if you want to watch that, anybody, that'll give you an idea. And you know, and we're in that phase at the moment. And you know, by the end of this year, maybe it will be, you know, accepted. Who knows? And in a way, you don't really care. You kind of think, well, do you know what? Just get on with your life. You know, if they don't want to tell you, well, that's a bit strange. But anyway.
I'll find the link for that as well and pop that in the chat afterwards.
Dark Reflection. So, yeah. So yeah, you know, there's no shortage of evidence, really. But anyway, it's been very nice speaking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much indeed, John. And Captain
pleasure.
John Hoyte, thank you very much indeed.
It's Hoyte, Hoyte, not Hoyte.
Oh, Hoyte. Okay, sorry.
It's Dutch.
Captain John Hoyte.
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
it's a pilot thing. We put people straight, you know.
Well, yeah, you better
you call
do,
it
otherwise you'll never end up.
aerotoxicity, and it's aerotoxic syndrome, because we call it aerotoxicity. They love to sort of, you know, muddy the water, really. So, you know, we just deal with the one term sort of thing. So yeah.
So is it just that's how you call it, or is aerotoxicity something different?
Well, it was a term which came on board about 4 years ago from the government, and I think there must be a department, you know, where they're sort of creating fudge, you know, and they think, oh, let's give it a new name. So they, you know, and if you look on Wikipedia, there's a load of garbage there. You know, I mean, so that gives you some idea. They're very powerful. It's the 5%. They've got all the money, and they can kind of die. So yeah.
Because I think there's other things as well. You know, as much as talking about the aerotoxic syndrome tonight, I think there's a lot of other things as well that can affect people in different ways. I mean, for me,
poisoning, you know, my friend was mercury poisoned. She was a nurse in the 80s, 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And she, you know, and that's a very obvious poison, mercury, and they've got it banned, you know, in Europe, but only for certain people, you know, sort of under 15s and pregnant mums, you know. So so we learn from each other, you know, because it's all the same thing. It's poisoning, really. So yeah. So we work together loosely. But anyway.
I can still remember very clearly days, because I used to live in Kent when I was younger, and we lived near a main bus depot, one of the major bus depots, and this was before the low sulphur fuels, and I had to walk past the main bus depot to get to school every day.
Like a gas chamber, yeah.
It is like a gas chamber, and I was chronic asthmatic.
Right.
I was always having asthma attacks. Always. I couldn't even tell you how many I've had over the years.
You know, they had a court case, didn't they, about 6 months ago, and they proved the side of, you know, so it's, I mean, it's all around us. And you have to be realistic. You kind of think, well, people love flying and everything, so it's like one of those. But anyway, it's a thing.
But they did eventually get there with the low sulphur fuels. They're a lot better than they were. And now they're working on the diesel fumes, but it takes time. So fingers crossed you'll get there in the queue. Fingers crossed.
We will. I've decided to go into the future and work backwards, because if you go into the future and work back to where you are now, you've got a sort of gap, you know. So that's what I'm going to publish a book on 18th of June. So that's kind of
right,
because you can get an overview of what's going on, and you can understand why the lawyers are making money from it, you know. And it's like a pantomime, honestly, you know, different the baddies, you know, the people who don't know. It's just classic sort of humor, really, you know. Sadly, it's you know, so you become a bit flippant about the whole thing, really. But anyway.
Well, you certainly have a very light-hearted way of talking about it all, makes it very entertaining, but at the same time, obviously makes it very clear that it's a very important topic. And yeah,
my mum keeps saying there's lots of other things, so, and apparently there are and everything. There we are.
But, yeah, and the other thing, I just briefly before we go, I haven't touched on, because one of the things that I like to challenge, and I haven't talked about it yet tonight, is one of the things I want to challenge is the stigma around mental health.
Right.
And your story tonight genuinely highlights to me something that I'm challenging. There is so much that's put, and we're talking about like terms, aerotoxic syndrome. There's so much that's put under the umbrella of mental health. And to me, I see mental health and emotional health as two separate things. And yet most organizations across the globe will class them as one thing. And if you tell people they're two separate things, they go, no, it's all the same. No, it's like a bicycle. It's got two wheels. Both wheels are independent, but they work together as the bike. You won't get far without them unless it's a unicycle. And the way I describe this is, like, for example, you've had your mental health problems through the poisoning from the aerotoxic syndrome, which is something that's been a sort of a created mental issue, whereas my son had an organic brain issue in terms of he's on the autistic spectrum, not severely, but that's what I call a mental health issue.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, when my son had Asperger's, he also had depression and suicide. He was really suicidal for years. And the reason I want to challenge mental health and say it's got to separate these out is because too many people, like you said earlier, when you were flying, you were afraid to say anything because you might get grounded, etc. And I think the reason a lot of people don't want to say anything is because they're afraid of the stigma. But I think when you look at the fact that my son had these two things going on, he'd got autistic spectrum disorder and he'd got depression and chronic depression with suicidal tendencies going on, we were able to cure the depression and help him overcome that, but he will be on the autistic spectrum for life. That's the difference to me between the mental health issue and the emotional issues. You can resolve the emotional cycle regardless of the mental health issue. And somebody with a mental health issue can be happy and jolly about life still like you are, or they can be really miserable, sad, depressed, suicidal. And I see them as two separate things. So I really appreciate you sharing your story tonight. Sorry, that's a real throw in at the end. But this is how I see it, is that the emotions can be resolved separately from the mental health. Yes, they work together. And if you have a mental health issue, it will affect emotions. But I still see emotions as a separate thing.
So where does poisoning fit in? Because that's, the trouble with all us lot. We've all been poisoned. You kind of think, wow, well, I don't know. Anyway, it's like, it's invisible. That's the trouble. So everybody looks pretty well. And I've always looked well in my life. And people say, oh, you're putting it on. And you think, well, why would I put it on? And all these like 40 passengers all gassed on one airplane. They're not putting, they've got a poisoning issue, so it's not mental health, kind of poisoning. So anyway.
Yeah, with you. So it creates these issues though, but it's then the mental health issue is then either brought on by, like you said, organic things that are from birth, or it's brought on by poisoning. People, oh my goodness, you get people like with Munchausen's who have got mental health disease or mental health issues, and then they poison other people.
So a famous Bush pilot, Richard Westgate, he got aerotoxic and he died in 2012. And he went to see 22 doctors, I think, and they all accused him of having Munchausen's, something we call it. He was poisoned, poor guy, and they couldn't do that. And that's how bad it is, really. They create all these other labels, and everything but the real one, and that's the thing, really.
So it's getting people aware that, if it doesn't appear to be just genuinely an emotional issue and everything else in life is fine, then there's got to be something else behind it. But it's just difficult. It's a difficult one, but it needs to be challenged, I think, over time.
So watch out if you go flying, because it can get 30%, and they can tell you in advance. They say you're vulnerable, so don't go flying. So that's a really incredible.
It's definitely put me off for a while.
They can look into the future. Sorry?
Yeah, definitely put me offline for a while. I mean, I know I once took
They don't want people to know, because it will actually put them off in droves. And
the pandemic's done well enough with that.
Who?
Yeah, the pandemic's done well enough with that this
Yeah,
year.
yeah. But they should have fixed
So,
this in 2017. That was their opportunity, and they didn't. So, there's always some excuse for not doing it, really. We that.
will be lots of red tape, but you'll get there. You'll get there.
Oh yeah, we've already got there. We're kind of doing the next thing, because we've kind of
just waiting for them to catch up. But that's amazing.
Yeah,
Well,
a bit slow.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much indeed for sharing your story tonight, John,
really
and
fun.
inspiring us.
Yeah,
So yeah, messages tonight from that is find a purpose, keep your brain active.
There you go.
Always say yes. That's amazing. Yep. So the link's in the chat, and I'll also find one to the film. Just remind me again, was it A Dark
Reflection?
A Dark Reflection.
And then they changed the title to Flight 313, Conspiracy for the American Market, but ignore that because I think it's gone back to A Dark Reflection. So anyway, but it's a great film, and it's and I was in it, and that was a funny thing. All the air crew had cameo roles. If you look, I'm on the top table as an airline executive. Quite funny, really, and you've got to have a bit of a laugh, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the other one. So we've had some really good takeaways from you tonight. Some absolute golden nuggets. Like I say, have a bit of a laugh. Keep your brain busy. Never give up. Don't be afraid. Just say yes. And and work with the team. Collaborate with other people. So thank you so much indeed, John. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you.
I think you're wonderful. I think you do a great job.
Oh, bless. Thank you. Thank you.
I've known you for a few weeks, but I'm in awe, and you've introduced me to some wonderful people. So that's really much appreciated.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Great. Hopefully that'll do something to help you. Well, we can have another catch up backstage in a bit, but we're just going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for watching in. Hope it's all gone absolutely well over on YouTube as well. We'll catch up later. Probably nobody's watched on YouTube. I don't know yet because it's the first time I've done it, so we'll see. But thank you ever so much to everybody, and we'll see you all again next Tuesday. And just to very quickly check in, next Tuesday we have Dennis Eaton from the Therapy Shed. So it's going to be all about massage and hands-on therapies next week. Something very different, a real treat. And hopefully a little bit about healthy eating as well, which might be just the ticket to follow up on your talk tonight, John. So thank you so much, and see you all again at 7 o'clock next week.
It's raw food. It's great.
Perfect. And it matches my screen. I love it. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.